Yes, I did.
Oh, Jai
I
Baba.
did.
Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Three of Meher Baba's favorite couplets of Hafiz, a mystical portion befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master without any question of why and what. About what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, the fault lies in your own incapacity to understand him. I am slave of the master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my master does is of the highest benefit to all concerned. Hafiz, Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Over to you, Karthik. Thank you.
Jai Baba. Good morning, everybody, and good to see the elusive Ravi Garu on the call. How are you?
Good. Very good to be back.
Yeah, yeah. So, how are things otherwise? All well? How did your Bombay discussion go? I hope it went well.
Yeah, it's going on well. Uh, we
Okay.
attend every week. Sometimes they give me a chance to present a PowerPoint presentation on the God Speaks, so I do that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know that. Unfortunately, I'm not able to catch up with your videos because they are on Facebook, and not on YouTube. But I
So
will try to do
I
something.
can actually I'm uploading into my own YouTube.
YouTube channel?
Because
No, don't do it to your YouTube channel. Put it on MBA. We'll promote it.
yeah, sure, I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, just send me the links. Just send me the links. I'll create a playlist because it'll be useful. And
Yeah,
we can
I
put the
can.
references in Trello. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think the problem with Facebook was I tried it and without a signed in user, that is, you have to be a Facebook user with a login. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you can't stop, play, you can't go back to memory, you can't save, and so on. So, and me being the attention deficit disorder guy, I need all that saved away, otherwise, it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, jokes apart,
Yeah,
let
I
me
can send you the. I uploaded into my own
links. Yeah,
account, YouTube account. I'll send you the links. You can put it there. Yeah,
also, yeah,
that would certainly help people who are serious about reading God Speaks. Yeah.
perfect. Yes. Okay, so we are continuing on the theme of love, which is the five-part series. We took up the topic of selfishness. So you start with the complement of love, which is selfishness, and the next chapter is the two parts, conditions of happiness, and then you have love and God as infinite love. So if you take conditions of happiness,
By the way,
the,
selfishness chapter is very, very important for us. It has got all the fundamentals of
oh,
spirituality.
no doubt about it. Yes,
Very beautiful
no doubt
chapter.
about it. Correct. Oh, I see Kiran as well. Jai Baba, how are you?
Jai Baba
Uh,
Karthik, Jai Baba everyone.
yes, good to have you back. So, as you were saying, selfishness, it also sets the full journey that the consciousness of the soul goes through. In the first, with the first identification with the ego, selfishness is born, and then
Desires.
selfishness moves on to selfishness moves on to as we improve or and make the positive journey, it firstly, of course, the selfishness strengthens. You become more
Yeah.
aware of your ego, and then your separateness is established more and more soundly. And then you move away after you start the spiritual path. You start recognizing the true values and move towards selflessness. And
Yeah.
then Baba's expression of selfness uh, in all, right? The selfness you start recognizing in everything, right? So
Right.
that's the way the progress
Yeah.
of yes. Okay,
Yeah.
so what are we covering in conditions of happiness? I'll just read the subtitles. Uh, Everyone seeks happiness, intertwining of pleasure and pain. Desire bears two kinds of fruits, changing moods. Suffering is caused by desires, mitigation of desires through suffering, temporary detachment. There is an illustrative story, and there is intense dispassion, complete detachment, opposites, and there is a subtopic of praise and blame, physical and mental suffering, and then abiding happiness through desirelessness. So we start with everyone seeks happiness and ends with abiding happiness comes through desirelessness. So it's going to be quite a journey. With that out of the way, let's go straight to the reading. Yeah. Um, okay. I'll start reading for a bit and then, of course, we'll keep rotating like every time. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. The Conditions of Happiness, Part 1. The Overcoming of Suffering through Detachment. First subtitle. Everyone seeks happiness. Every creature in the world is seeking happiness, and man is no exception. Seemingly, man sets his heart on many kinds of things, but ultimately, all that he desires or undertakes is for the sake of happiness. If he is keen to have power, it is because he expects to derive happiness from its use. If he strives for money, it is because he thinks it will secure the conditions and means for his happiness. If he seeks knowledge, health, or beauty, science, art, or literature, it is because he feels that his pursuit of happiness is directly dependent upon them. If he struggles for worldly success and fame, it is because he hopes to find happiness in their attainment. Through all his endeavors and pursuits, man wants to be happy. Happiness is the ultimate motive power which drives him in all that he does. Pretty simple paragraph, but quite a lot said there. It sets the ground for what what motivates or what drives all human behavior. All human behavior is driven. So from wherever we are, we seek a zone of greater happiness, right? Or we basically seek a abiding state of happiness that we want for ourselves, right? Intertwining of pleasure and pain. Everyone seeks to be happy, yet most persons are immersed in some kind of suffering. If at times they do get small installments of happiness in their lives, it is neither unadulterated nor abiding. I repeat, if at times they do get small installments of happiness in their lives, it is neither unadulterated nor abiding. So, one, it's not complete happiness without any iota of any other thing. And also, it's not abiding. It's not continuous and it's not sustained. Right? Their
Got a
lives are
question.
never as sure.
Suppose I'm hungry, I don't have food, so I'm not happy, right? I'm unhappy.
Mhm.
And I got food. When I'm hungry, somebody provided me food. I ate it. Now I'm satisfied. So is the satisfaction same as happiness?
In the from the purposes of this chapter or the previous paragraph, yes. Anything that so even satiation is happiness. Security from an enemy is happiness.
Happiness.
So to a person who is insecure or in doesn't have shelter from enemies, if he's getting protection, he's actually getting he's moving to a zone of happiness compared to where he was. If somebody is let's talk about that. If somebody is faced with the rain and does not have a roof over his shoulder, that he is also happier if he gets a roof over his shoulder. And I'm saying that given I am in Dubai and faced with so much of rain-related misery.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if
Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes sense, but my mind is going towards a certain angle. Let me bring that up. So if I go on being satisfied, I'm not progressing.
Okay.
Yes, no. I'm stagnant
No,
in a way.
no, you're yeah. Hmm.
In a way, so I am keep on going in this samsara cycle of birth and death. If I am just stuck to the satisfaction part of it, so I have to pursue my goals and be not satisfied because I want to pursue the goals of evolution. I want to evolve to higher state, whatever it is. We can call it spiritual. Spiritually, I want to be advanced. I want to be
Mokshatvam.
finally mokshaptam. Yeah, finally. Until then,
Mokshatvam.
I'm not satisfied. That means I feel I am lacking. I'm wanting, I'm not happy because I'm not knowledgeable. Should I say that, or should I say I'm content with whatever I have, wherever I am, but I'm pursuing to be better than now?
Okay, I'll give
Here
a
is
quick response.
Kama
I think
raising
Kama has
hand.
this. Yes, Kama's raising his hand. So I'll just give
First
a
of
quick
all,
response and then
yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So the quick response is the nature of our happiness is exact opposite of what is mentioned here. Unadulterated nor abiding. Unadulterated because it's not pure happiness. So if I get that hunger satiated, I will so let us say I got idlis to fill my stomach. I will be happy with the fact that I got idli and I'm able to get away from hunger. But as I'm having that idli and chutney, a part of me will say, "Hey, wish there was sambar. If there was sambar, I would have been happier." Right. So there is always a tinge of adulteration in my happiness. Second,
Mm,
after I have eaten 4 idlis, that the happiness that associated with the satiation of the hunger will cease,
mm,
and I'm already
mm,
thinking, okay, this meal has served me for today. What happens to
mm,
my next meal? Do I have money for it? Do I and I already set up the stage for the next bout of unhappiness, right?
mm,
So it's
mm,
not abiding. So the nature of human mind is the scale of the goals and desires, hence the happiness or unhappiness, keeps changing constantly. A
mm,
car
mm,
is not an end in itself. Once I have acquired it, like we learned in the chapter on selfishness, uh, uh, when you get an acquisition, it gives you a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, but it is very, very temporary, and it
mm,
does not take too much time for it to be replaced by another desire on top of it. So a
mm,
Maruti 800 is also a car, a BMW is also a car. One car, yeah, it gives you the aspiration for getting the next one. So it's not an end in
mm,
itself, right? And
mm,
this journey continues, like you said, till you get to the point of understanding the true nature, where you start questioning what is this source of happiness and what is this true happiness. And then slowly
mm.
you uncover true values and go down the path of spirituality. Kama, please go ahead. Kama,
Kama went to eat breakfast, idli sambar.
looks like.
Yeah, Jai Baba, Jai Baba. Okay, my understanding is based on what you just discussed. Happiness is very relative. based on each individual's degree of consciousness or their sanskaric imprint. So we have, second thing is we have to look at the context. Third, we have to understand what is the difference between wants and needs. What is necessary, what is important, and what is necessity for keeping the body alive, and what is basically a desire, a want, whether in form of lust, greed, or
It looks
anger.
like you've not changed your phone yet. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me
I
now?
can hear.
We can
Yeah,
hear.
yeah.
I can
Alright,
hear.
We
properly.
can hear.
I can hear. Very good. I can hear you.
Go ahead. It's
Compared to
just
other
my side.
times. Yeah, it's very good.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Kama.
So basically, we are looking at, one is the relative happiness, one is the context of what we are discussing, one is about what is necessary and what is a want. The other one is what is real desire. We know the real desire is only liberation, mukti in different forms. We understand that. That is because of man's ego. And as Baba has said, there is another quote where we had talked about the tree of desire. So I think it will come up later in one of the chapters where he says the tree of desire has two kinds of fruits. One is sweet, which one is called sweet. One type of fruit is sweet, which is called pleasure. The other one is bitter, which is basically pain. So if you want to experience the tree of desire, then you have to accept both pleasure and pain. So the only way, if you want to say that I don't want to have an only pleasure, it's not possible. That's not how nature works. So the only way you can do it is renunciation of desires. Because anyway, desires are because of sanskaras. Because the only real desire is self-emancipation. And as a human being, we are already there. And what is preventing us from getting liberated is the layer of sanskaras which we are working on. So I think in terms of understanding the context of the situation, if a person is hungry, definitely he needs to have food and the desire for food is okay. But earlier we talked about if you're thirsty, do you need water or do you need lemonade? So I think in that sense, we have to understand the context of the situation, what we are talking about. Is it a necessity or need to sustain the body? Or is it just a form of desire, like as you say, upgrading your apartment or whatever? So I think that happiness and suffering are basically very relative based on each person's consciousness. What we are trying to explore out here is how do we get bliss? How do we get inner poise? And that's the point out here. Jai Baba.
Very good point. Just want to add one more point, Kama. The desires, are we desiring for a material things, or are we desiring a spiritual question we have? That makes a big difference, right? Material nature, we know it leads us nowhere. It breeds more and more desires. Whereas the question what we have, who am I? If I desire for that, that is the real desire. That was what once I had asked Urich long time ago. Hey, what I mean, we have desires, and now you're saying moksha. If I want to have a moksha, there is also desire. And Urich immediately told me that is the real desire you need to have. Compared to that desire, every other desire false. That's what he said. Yeah, false. Jai Baba.
Okay, Jai Baba, to add on to what you're saying, there is a chapter called The Deeper Aspects of Sadhana, which is, we know probably, I don't know whether we have read it, 200, page 258, where I think that it is not about material desires or spiritual desires. As far as I'm concerned, spirituality means how to lead a material life, spiritually speaking. So we have a body, we have a material body, which is.
No, the question is, Kama, I think you broke off, whether I want to have a car,
And this
or whether I want to read God Speaks Me Learn Better. That's the difference.
We have to liberate itself. So they are
Both of
naturally
you
the
are
material
speaking.
body. Yeah.
I think you
Right.
broke in between, Kama.
Okay, sorry, it's about the connection. So what I want to repeat is here is that we are talking about the material body and the spiritual body. The material body, which is the gross, subtle, and mental,
No, we're talking about
needs
material desire or
consciousness
spiritual
to
desire.
sustain.
Material desire or
Yeah,
spiritual desire.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yes. I'm just giving an extrapolation of when we are talking about material and spiritual desire. What is material desire? It's material freedom. If you ask if the desire is there for material freedom, I want to retire at 40 rather than at 60 or 65 so that I can focus on my spiritual emancipation 24/7. That is not a bad desire. That's being practical. So, first, getting material freedom as per the self actualization of Maslow is not a bad desire, but that is not the end goal. It is only a means towards spiritual freedom.
I think we are digressing, Kama.
No, you're not. I think I agree with Kama. Like he
good.
said, everything is Yeah. Go ahead, Kama.
What comes first? What is the desire? The desire is for material freedom.
Which
So
does not
we are talking
stop you
about
from, yeah. You know, if you have
right
material freedom,
desire.
that doesn't end you, as goes on multiplying.
No. The point here is that, according to the Maslow self-actualization principle, the person who has fulfilled his material desire or reached financial stability, if he has made 100 million, but he wants to make $1 billion, then naturally he is kind of stuck. He's entangled in that.
Connection is cutting off. You're cutting off. Yeah, go ahead, Karthik. I think he's cutting off.
Yeah. So I was only going to comment on one to support Kama in one level.
So I think the question here is that we are yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, finish what you're saying. Question here is?
He is cut off.
Yeah.
He muted, I think. He muted himself.
Yeah,
Okay.
now he has.
No.
Now he has.
Yeah, you were muted.
What was your question?
No, you said you said
You're already talking without knowing the question, my dear friend. Okay, go ahead.
I thought there was somebody who was asking about something that I was describing. That what I'm trying to say is that the desire for material freedom and spiritual is a good desire as long as we know what the end goal is. That essay of Lover and the Beloved is clearly says that we are already there. The only thing that is separating us is our ego, and that's what we are working on. So, which is a good desire, to dissolve the ego. That's the only real desire. Okay, Baba.
Yeah, thank you. I think to support Kama and maybe help Ravi get why Kama's answer was good is so if you look at it, the first point that Kama started with was the point about contextual, right? So everything is finally contextual. So even if you take the approach of Maslow or whatever steps that one takes to get to material freedom so that he can become spiritual, that's a landmine actually, because one man's material freedom could be another man's sense of luxury, right? Just if you take, even if you just take across East and West, or even within the East, somebody can live an ascetic's life and reach that level of material freedom very quickly. But then it's relative to what each person does. So there's no one size all fits all answer. But I'm so excited with the clarity and the answer you got from Erich. The true justified or a desire that can be pursued is a positive desire, like desire for moksha, desire for spiritual emancipation, right? So everything else is not a real desire which is even worthy of having around you, right? I hope that clarifies. Ravi?
Yeah, I think we started out with a different question and we are led to a different thing. But
All right.
it's a question of
Yeah.
happiness, right? Whether I'm happy or not,
Yes.
whether I'm satisfied or not. But we need to understand, why am I satisfied? Is it for the material nature I'm satisfied? I'm happy? I mean, we have to have the quality of contentment in us. Whatever we have, we should be content, because contentment is a spiritual quality that we need to develop. But we still have to have the desire for knowing, growing, learning, improving our knowledge one step at a time, ultimately to reach that moksha or realization with the help of our Guru Meher Baba. That's what I want to say.
I believe the right terminology is there is nothing to learn. It is unlearning the ignorance. I think we have to use the right words. We are unlearning the ignorance of our spiritual knowledge, but definitely learning the technical knowledge to live the material life in 21st century is very important. So there are two kinds of learning. We have to be very clear. Learning in the technical field, in the material field is important today. But on the spiritual side, why we are reading Meher Baba and all the other saints is to remove our ignorance, because that knowledge is already latent in us. So there's nothing new to learn. We are just shedding all the ignorance that we have gathered. Jai Baba.
Yeah,
I think
Jai Baba.
what I would say
think-
is,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sanjay,
yeah.
go ahead,
Kama
go ahead.
always makes this point and very pertinent, unlearning. But I think we are gaining spiritual knowledge to do that unlearning. You have to learn to unlearn and learn right things to unlearn the wrong things, actually. And
Yeah, I mean, it is.
ultimately get out of any kind of learning or impressions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically opposite, right? If
Yeah.
I don't have knowledge, I'm ignorant. If
Yeah.
I'm knowledgeable, I'm getting to be, I know a little bit, I'm less ignorant.
Yeah.
So either you can unlearn the ignorance or learn the knowledge.
Yeah.
Whatever
How
you
do you
say.
unlearn is to learn. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Continue, Dr. Ravi. Yeah. Sorry.
Ignorant, we are not going to
Yes.
go for the knowledge. That is the point here. First, you have to know that you're ignorant. Then only you will say, I will start exploring what is real knowledge. Jai Baba.
What? They say it
Yes,
again?
yes.
Come on. My goodness. What are you talking about? You are raising my blood pressure, man. Come on, start.
Relax.
He
Okay.
I said that unless you know that you are ignorant, you are not going to look for spiritual knowledge.
Yes.
It's just a form of semantics, I think.
Of course, man.
Yes.
Of course, Kama.
Yes.
We know we are ignorant. We know, otherwise you don't learn, right? If I know everything, that is not true. We know something, we don't know a lot of things, probably.
I think we means not the whole humanity. I don't know. I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
But the
An
whole
individual.
humanity is not knowing the ignorance. Yeah, it's the individual. Yes.
Individual, of course, is individual. Yeah. All right, let's disagree, Kama. Let's
Okay,
move.
let's continue. Okay, so I think this will very soon slip into the territory of these 9 o'clock evening news shows with Kama and Ravi in their current moods. Let me stop that that tendency and continue reading. I think we addressed the question of what is this happiness. Let me continue from that point on. Their lives are never a series of, in fact, let me read the whole paragraph, intertwining of pleasure and pain. Everyone seeks to be happy, yet most persons are immersed in some kind of suffering. If at times they do get small installments of happiness in their lives, it is neither unadulterated nor abiding. Their lives are never a series of unmixed pleasures. It moves between the opposites of pain and pleasure, which are entwined like darkened clouds and shining rainbows. The moments of pleasure occasionally appearing in their lives soon vanish like rainbows, which shine in their splendor only to disappear from the sky. If these moments of pleasure leave any trace, it is of a memory that only augments the pain of having lost them. Such memory is an invariable legacy of most pleasures. So the linkage between pleasure and pain and how one invariably leads to being strongly brought out here. And this is the para that already Kama was talking about, the tree, and then it bears two kinds of fruits. Desire bears two kinds of fruits. Man does not seek suffering, but it comes to him as an inevitable outcome of the very manner in which he seeks happiness. He seeks happiness through the fulfillment of his desires, but such fulfillment is never an assured thing. Hence, in the pursuit of desires, man is also unavoidably preparing for the suffering from their non-fulfillment. Same tree of desire bears two kinds of fruit, one sweet, which is pleasure, and one bitter, which is suffering. If this tree is allowed to flourish, it cannot be made to yield just one kind of fruit. Those who have bid for one kind of fruit must be ready to have the other also. Man pursues pleasure furiously and clings to it fondly when it comes. He tries to avoid the impending suffering desperately and smarts under it with resentment. His fury and fondness are not of much avail, for his pleasure is doomed to fade and disappear one day, and his desperation and resentment are equally of no avail, for he cannot escape the suffering that results. Any thoughts? Okay, let me continue. Changing moods. Goaded by multifarious desires, man seeks the pleasures of the world with unabating hope. His zest for pleasures does not remain unalloyed, however, because even while he is reaching for the cup of pleasure, he often has to gulp down doses of suffering. His enthusiasm for pleasure is abated by suffering, which often follows in pleasure's wake. He is subject to sudden moods and impulses. Sometimes he is happy and elated, and at other times he is very unhappy and downhearted. His moods change as his desires are fulfilled or frustrated. Satisfaction of some desires yields momentary happiness, but this happiness does not last, and it soon leads to the reaction of depression. His moods subject him to ups and downs and to constant change. Suffering caused by desires. Fulfillment of desires does not lead to their termination. They are submerged for a while only to reappear with added intensity. When a person is hungry, he eats to satisfy the desire, but soon feels hungry again. If he eats too much, even in the fulfillment of his desire, he experiences pain and discomfort. It is the same with all the desires of the world. They can only yield a happiness that is fleeting. Even in the very moment of their fulfillment, the happiness they yield has already begun to fade and vanish. Worldly desires can therefore never lead to abiding happiness. On the contrary, they invariably invite unending suffering of many kinds. When an individual is full of worldly desires, a plentiful crop of suffering is unavoidably in store for him. Desire is inevitably the cause of much suffering. This is the law. Okay, I continue then if there are no comments or questions. Mitigation of desires through suffering. If a person experiences or visualizes the suffering that waits upon desires, his desires become mitigated. Sometimes intense suffering makes him detached from worldly life, but this detachment is often again set aside because of a fresh flood of desires. Many persons temporarily lose their interest in worldly objects due to the impact of acute suffering brought on by desires. But detachment must be lasting if it is to pave the way for freedom from desires. There are varying degrees of detachment, and not all of them are lasting. Right. So
What's the
now
first,
the idea of detachment.
Karthik, what's the meaning of the first sentence?
If a person experiences or visualizes the suffering that waits upon desires, his desires become mitigated. So if I am able to link that, the last time I had 4 idlis and chutney, I'm already thinking of the disappointment that comes from the fact that there was no sambar. If I remember that in time, interest in just the idli itself will go down. But that's not the way the human mind works. When we think of the desire, we only think of the happiness associated with the desire,
Pleasure.
and we
Oh, I
forget
see.
we forget that it came with a crop of pain as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
How I
yeah,
see is, if we have a desire, if we work for it, work hard for it, you know, let's say there's a tennis player and he wants to win the Wimbledon. He works very hard throughout the year, playing on the grass court, playing every day, working very hard, every kind of a shot and everything. And the winning is only a matter of one match. But in that winning, there's a lot of hard work is involved. So the desire of winning, of course, once he wins, he's very happy. But that happiness has got a lot of suffering too. And same thing, if somebody is not good, they're going to lose. Uh, there's going to be disappointment. So every desire has got both the parts, both the happiness part as well as the other part also, either suffering or disappointment or whatever it is. Jai Baba.
yeah, and yeah, that's correct. Okay, I'll continue then. So he started the concept of detachment. The first one is temporary detachment. Temporary detachment. Sometimes a person is greatly moved by an unusually strong experience, such as seeing someone die or witnessing a burial or a cremation. Such experiences are thought provoking, and they initiate long trains of ideas about the futility and emptiness of worldly existence. Under the pressure of such experiences, the person realizes that one day he must die and take leave of all the worldly objects so dear to him. But these thoughts, as well as the detachment born thereof, are short lived. They are soon forgotten, and the person resumes his attachment to the world and its alluring objects. This temporary and passing mood of detachment is known as smashana vairagya, cremation or burial ground detachment, because it usually arises when witnessing a cremation or a burial and stays in the mind only while in the presence of the dead body. Such a mode of detachment is as temporary as it is sudden. It seems to be strong and effective while it lasts, but it is only sustained by the vividness of some experience. When the experience vanishes, the mood of detachment also quickly passes without seriously affecting one's general attitude toward life. Do you all agree with this concept? concept of the Shamashana Vairagya?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you been
Absolutely.
through this?
Yeah, I mean, there is nothing to agree or disagree about it.
Yeah,
There is nothing
that's
to
right.
agree or disagree about it. Baba,
No. Wrong.
But yes,
Thing,
all of us
wrong thing.
experience
My
it.
question
It is
was,
always
have you experienced it? Experienced.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, you see other people in pain also that you get the same feel. Actually, it's not just about death. It's also people
Not
suffering.
just that, just people
So,
suffering.
yeah. And
close quarters.
as closely as you see, you see them actually with your eyes. It's a different experience than seeing on television or listening on the news. So the more closer to you are to that reality, the deeper the experience is. Yeah.
Correct. Perfect. Okay. Illustrative story linked to that. The passing mood of detachment might be illustrated by the story of a person who once saw at the theatre a spiritual drama about Gopi Chanda, the great Indian king, who renounced everything in pursuit of truth. The drama impressed him so deeply that, disregarding all his duties to his family, he joined a band of Bairagis. Bairagis are wandering ascetics, belonging to the cult of Gopi Chanda. Renouncing all his former modes of life, he dressed as a Bairagi, shaved his head, and sat under a tree as advised by the other members of the group. At first, he plunged into deep meditation, but as the heat of the sun grew stronger, his enthusiasm for meditation began to cool down. As the day went on, he began to feel hungry and thirsty and became very restless and miserable. When the members of his family noticed his absence from home, they became worried about him. After some searching, they found him sitting under the tree in this miserable plight. He had grown haggard and was plainly unhappy. I in this, he took her reproach as a boon from heaven. So, silencing her quickly, he put on his turban and ordinary clothes, and meekly followed her home. Yeah. Now that is
That's why
temporary
I'm always
detachment.
home. That's why I'm always home taking care of things. I don't need to
Yeah,
meekly follow anybody.
no, I can identify with the meekly following part, but yeah, I'm not home.
Frankly, Kama, Karthik and Doctor, it happens in all spheres of our life. You get excited when from January 1st, I'm going to go to the gym.
Yes.
But actually, our commitment is not so, 20 days or one. It happens in the book reading. No, I'm going to finish one book in 15 days. This year is at least 30, 25 books I have to read. We get very excited reading some good article or listening to some good book writer. That excitement, you get that. But it fizzles out. It's like Pratap Kaka used to say the soda water Josh, You get that. Then the fizzle goes out and then it goes away. It's in all aspects of it. Yeah.
There was a story about life is all about trying to do something and then finally leaving it. There was a story that Urich was telling. Do you guys know about the story of Maulana, I believe? Maulana was a king, and he hears about a perfect master in the town, came to town. He wants to visit. So he visits the perfect master, and perfect masters, I believe, they don't give any lectures or talk any philosophy, spirituality, I believe. They talk only, how are you? what do you do? How are your children? And all these very small little things, they don't talk. And then finally the king wants to leave, and he asks the perfect master to give a departing message. And the perfect master says, he laughs and says, I don't have any message to give you, because yeah, there's nothing there to give. But anyway, since you're asking me, I'll tell you another story. In a story, there was a king who goes on a hunting, and then he hunts, and he found a prey, and he was after the prey. He escapes, and the king was after the prey. Finally, he ends up somewhere in the middle of the jungle. He doesn't know where he was. He goes beyond his territory of his own kingdom, and he was chasing that prey for so long that he gets tired. He wants water in a heavy sun. And the sun was so much that he was so much thirsty, he thought he was going to die. And then suddenly another perfect master comes and says, I'll give you water, but you have to give me something. And the king says, I am the king. I can give anything what you want. Please give me water. I'm dying. The perfect master says, okay, can you give me half of your kingdom? And there's no other choice than to live. So he says, okay, I'll give you half the kingdom. So the perfect master gives him water. And then the king gets up and gets energy, and he tries to go towards his kingdom. And when he was reaching the kingdom, he has to pee, pass the urine. And he had some problem comes, and he could not pee, and there was nobody. And he was still walking and walking. And he comes to a point for hours together. He walks towards kingdom, and the bladder was so full, he thought he was going to die. And the perfect master appears again. Hey, I have a medicine that can relieve you from your pain. And the king says, yes, please, I'm going to die. Please give me the medicine, but you have to give me something. And the king says, I can give you anything because I'm going to die. And the perfect master asks, give me another half of your kingdom. He says, okay, take it. There's nothing I can do. He gives the medicine, and the king relieves, and he was satisfied. Then the perfect master says, keep your kingdom and rule. The whole life is this thing. At one time you want water, now you want to pee. The whole life is just like that. That's how the story ends.
So
We got the message, right?
Yeah. So at the time of the desperation of your desire, or the possible frustration of the desire, you are ready to trade off many things. You're ready to
Many
trade off
things.
many other things, and your intensity of acquisition of that desire or fulfillment of that desire is so high that you're able to trade off many things. But then I mean, in the case of the kingdom, I mean, in the case of the second perfect master, he gives the kingdom back. But then I'm sure that we can relate to things where we have made bad decisions based on this competing desires, which replace one over the other, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
let's continue.
Yeah. See, we only survive on great things we have done, but we don't think about all these great things are temporary. Everything is temporary. But
Yeah.
we need a lot of help with a lot of things that we don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why we seek God, I guess. Yeah.
So from temporary detachment, let's see what is intense dispassion. Sometimes the mood of detachment, oh, I forgot, we have to rotate our reading. Anybody wants to read from this point? Whoever wants to put their hand up. No volunteers. I continue.
Or is there
Intense.
I can
I'll just.
read it. I wasn't just mute. I can read.
Okay. Yeah, please continue from this point. Intense dispassion.
Intense dispassion. Sometimes the mood of detachment is more lasting and not only endures of considerable time, but also seriously modifies one's general attitude toward life. This is called Tivra Vairagya or intense dispassion. Such intense dispassion usually arises from some great misfortune, such as loss of one's own dear ones or the loss of property or reputation. Under the influence of this wave of detachment, the person renounces all worldly things. Tivra Vairagya of this type has its own spiritual value, but it is also likely to disappear in the course of time or be disturbed by the one set of recurring food of worldly desires. The disgust
Recurring flood.
for sorry,
Recurring flood of
yeah,
worldly desires.
sorry, recurring flood of worldly desires. The disgust for the world that a person feels in such cases is due to powerful impression left by misfortune, and it does not endure because it is not born of understanding. It is only a severe reaction to life.
So, like we have experienced Vairagya of the nature of Smashana Vairagya, have anybody experienced Tivra Vairagya? Have you taken on something with uh, which you have been able to sustain for longer? I hope there are examples in our lives. Okay, continue.
Complete detachment. The kind of detachment that really lasts is due to the understanding of suffering and its cause. It is securely based upon the unshakable knowledge that all things of this world are momentary and passing, and that any clinging to them is bound eventually to be a source of pain. Man seeks worldly objects of pleasure and tries to avoid things that bring pain without realizing that he cannot have the one and eschew the other. As long as there is attachment to worldly objects of pleasure, he must perpetually invite upon himself the suffering of not having them and the suffering of losing them after having got them. Lasting detachment, which brings freedom from all desires and attachments, is called Purna Vairagya or completely dispassion. Complete detachment is one of the essential conditions of lasting and true happiness. For the person who has completely detachment, no longer creates for himself the suffering that is due to the unending thraldom produced by desires.
So,
Desirelessness,
so this is the stage of almost getting to be a saint, right? You're on the path. You're very clearly on the path. So nothing moves you. No new desires can excite you. You're continuously in a state of detachment, and that happens only with the identification with the true nature of the true values, right? And once you do that, and you have got in the path of spirituality, then it's fine. That's where you've reached if you're in Purna Vairagya.
Yeah. See, I just want to recall the God speaks at one point in Sevenfold Veil. Baba talks about the achievements of leaving the attachments. If you achieve by yourself, Baba said that's not an easy thing. Let's say you try to achieve some weakness you have, and you achieved it by some sort of a discipline. That's a very difficult task to achieve. And suppose it's you try to do some aspect of completely detaching from all the desires. That is the greatest act, Baba said. And much more greater than these two are if you give up all your weaknesses for the sake of your love for God. That is the best spiritual achievement, it seems. So just thought of bringing that sevenfold veil point, what Baba talked about,
Is
3 grades of achievement. Purna Vairagya.
sure. So is
Jai Baba.
that from a message? Is that from a particular message or a quote?
It's in the God Speaks in sevenfold veil.
Sevenfold veil. Okay.
He talked about how to achieve through love for God.
Yeah. Okay. Continue.
Opposites. Desirelessness makes an individual firm like a rock. He is neither moved by pleasure nor by sorrow. He is not upset by the onslaughts of opposites. One who is affected by agreeable things is bound to be affected by disagreeable things. If a person is encouraged in his endeavors by an woman considered auspicious, he is bound to be discouraged by one considered to be inauspicious. Cannot resist the discouraging effect of an inauspicious omen as long as he derives strength from an auspicious one. The only way not to upset by omens is to be indifferent to auspicious as well as inauspicious omens. The same is true of the opposites of praise and blame. If a person is pleased by receiving praise, he is bound to be miserable when he receives blame. He cannot keep himself steady under a shower of blame as long as he is inwardly delighted by receiving praise. The only way not to be upset by blame is to be detached from praise also. Only then, when a person remains unmoved by the opposites of praise and blame, then he does not lose his equanimity. The steadiness and the equanimity that remain unaffected by any opposites is possible only through complete detachment, which is an essential condition of lasting and true happiness. The individual who has complete detachment is not at the mercy of the opposites of experience, and being free from thraldom of all desires, he no longer creates his own suffering.
Any
We should not.
thoughts on this?
Yeah,
Yes,
one
Sanjay.
question comes to my mind is, as Baba lovers, we should not be looking at the auspicious.
That's an arguable point, right? So I know Ashok loves rain, right? Mayor Kiran told us about the rain omens in his life, right? So you cannot. I know what you mean. I know why you're saying the questions that you
Rain is
said.
generally,
Yeah,
but the Tithi and the Rahu Kala and all that, all that is there in the Indian.
that is yeah, correct. That's more the panchang and the astrology. So I think it's all super contextual. If you associate too much importance to all, obviously it's harmful, right?
Yeah.
Having a sense of proportion and being guided, not being too reliant on these would be the best case.
Yeah. Just rely on Baba. That's the best thing.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. As simple as that.
Yes.
Jai
Okay,
Baba,
Sanjayji.
I have a, yeah, Jai Baba, I have a
Yeah, go ahead.
suggestion. As Ravi said, I think on God Speaks supplement, there is a couple of pages on renunciation and Vaitag and Vairagya. I think it would be helpful if somebody reads that. It comes from page 194 to 198. Either you can do it as a reading later, or if somebody reads it now, it will add value to this discussion. Okay, Bob.
So, do we do it at the end of this chapter, if you don't mind?
Yes, I think that would be good.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's read it together, but then at the end of this chapter, so that we finish this.
Jay Baba, did you all mention rain? I couldn't.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to say that Baba has also in various places and anecdotes given a lot of importance to rain, because there were many instances of famine, or let's say drought-like condition in and around Mehrabad and Maharashtra. So he has given a lot of importance to that, spiritual significance to that as well. I just thought I'll add to whatever was discussed.
Yeah.
See how my trigger works, Sanjay ji?
You know,
Sorry? Sorry?
Nothing, Ashok. I'm just
Is it-
pulling your leg.
Yes, you're right.
Is
You're
it out
right.
of context? Sorry.
And just to add, 2 days back there was a heavy downpour in Mehrabad. Heavy.
mm,
This is very unusual actually. And if you see the Mehrabad hill, there are channels which got created because of the water flow. So
mm.
just to add, yeah. Yeah, Baba.
You know, I'd like to add
Yeah.
one incident regarding the rain that happened when I was in Mehrabad. I was in Mehrabad. When was that? Long time ago. And Alaba passed away. And that was the day they brought the Alaba's body, and they put it. They brought it from. He used to stay in Mehrajad, right? So he brought him the body and straight took him to the tomb. He put there, said the prayers, and then they brought the body down and put it in the Mandali hall. The whole day, all the singers came. They were all singing the whole day. And then around 4 o'clock, they dug the hole there, and we were all there, lowering the body. They put they put him in the box, and they put like 3 ropes, and the people held. You know, there was no clouds, nothing. So it was quite. I don't remember exactly what month was it was. Uh, and you know, when they were lowering, suddenly it started raining. Not a heavy rain, just few drops. And the moment they put the box down all the way in the hole, and then the rain stopped. Just few raindrops, you know. And we all felt people started shouting, "Avatar Meher Baba ki jai," you know. It was a clear indication out of blue how the rain came. I think it was all Baba's blessing, I think. Jai Baba.
Excellent. Nice example.
Yeah.
Can I read this part? 194, you were saying 194.
Sure. But let's just finish off the chapter. We have a few paras. You can read the God speaks part. Yes. Sure. Ashish, you want to finish?
The 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 same true the the same is true of the opposites of praise and blame. I think this one is done already.
No. It's not.
No, we were at the suffering, creates his own suffering.
Oh,
Yeah, we wanted to speak
the individual who
physical
has
and mental
complete. Yes,
suffering.
correct.
Physical and mental suffering. Humanity is subject to much suffering, physical and mental. Of these two, mental suffering is the more acute. Those with limited vision think that suffering can only be physical. Their idea of suffering is of some kind of illness or torture of the body. Mental suffering is worse than physical suffering. Physical suffering sometimes comes as blessing because it serves the purpose of easing mental suffering by winning away one's attention from the mental suffering. abiding happiness through desirelessness. It is not right to make much of purely physical suffering. It can be borne through the exercise of willpower and endurance. The true suffering that counts is mental. Even yogis who can endure great physical suffering find it difficult to keep free from mental suffering, which is rooted in the frustration of desires. If a person does not want anything, he is not unhappy under any adverse circumstances, not even in the jaws of a lion. The state of complete desirelessness is latent in everyone. And when, through complete detachment, one reaches the state of wanting nothing, one taps the unfailing inner source of eternal and unfading happiness, which is not based upon the objects of the world, but is sustained by self knowledge and self realization.
So quite a few things that we covered in the last few chapters, last few paras. So one is, you know, being unmoved by anything, right? Sita pragya, or being firm like a rock. And then finally, the concept of mental and physical suffering. And and finally, the fact that mental suffering is more difficult to endure. And the one who endures mental suffering and is not moved by it is obviously guided by the benefit of true values, the spiritual path. So that's what's being said here. So we'll go and read the God Speaks supplement now. But before that, any thoughts and questions before we wrap this part?
Don't worry,
Yeah,
be
only
happy.
thing to add is yeah, and as the civilization is progressing, scientific inventions are helping people to elevate their physical suffering. The mental suffering part is uh, areas of concern. Even in the organizations, we talk of these things. You know, there is mental
Huge,
wellness. We
huge.
call it. Yeah, mental wellness is
That's
a
a
big thing in all the companies. You have these sessions being held and counseling
very,
desks if people are in under stress. Yeah, Jai Baba.
very beautiful point, right? So the world where it is today, the more or less hunger is kept out, right? Except for a few countries, maybe which are still reeling under the impact of hunger and basic needs, right? Most of humanity leads a life where physical suffering, other than through incidents or oppression or calamity, physical suffering is more or less under control. But very interesting observation and important observation. We are in the era of continued and unexplored new ways of mental suffering, create obviously uh, absence of spirituality, of the guidance of a master in those people's minds. But yes, that's a huge trend, and it's only a area of concern. The new things happening there, it's going to get worse before it gets any better. Okay, so if you're okay, we can go to the renunciation supplement, which I have open now. Ashok,
Yeah. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Renunciation.
thank you, Ashish, for reading, and yeah, Ashok, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Ashish. Uh, Renunciation. When a pilgrim, and by pilgrim we mean here aspirant or disciple, feels drawn to renunciation, it means that the spirit of renunciation was already latent in him. This readiness results from the swing of the terrible pendulum from pain to pleasure and from pleasure to pain. In the countless forms of evolution and in the countless entrances and exits through the doors of birth and death experienced through reincarnation. Because the spirit of renunciation is latent, it needs only some exciting cause to bring it to the surface, and is only when it comes to the surface that we are able to see the power and nature of the latent spirit. If the latent spirit is simply as spiritual indigestion from a temporary surfeit of pain combined with a mild desire for something, please raise it.
I'm back.
What happened? I see
Yeah, I'm
green
back.
everywhere. What happened?
No, that was me. My
Hmm.
mobile internet gave up. I'm on mobile internet.
Experience during reincarnation. Because the spirit of renunciation is latent, it needs only some exciting causes to bring it to the surface, and it is only when it comes to the surface that we are able to see the power and nature of the latent spirit. If the latent spirit is simply a spiritual indigestion from temporary surfeit of pain, combined with a mild desire for something more pleasant, the overt renunciation will be only of a fleeting and feeble kind, a mere temporary escape from the unpleasantness. At its best, however, this latent spirit is a secret pact of aggression between an incurable disgust for the world and an ardent and burning thirst for God. When it comes to the surface, it showed itself as an invincible determination to marshal the entire being to the attainment of victory over the lower self and to reject everything that is irrelevant to this great and terrible struggle. Note this word reject. It means that such a pilgrim casts aside irrelevancies. We might call renunciation the fruit of the flower of spiritual longing, fertilized by the pollen of disgust for the futility of endless births and deaths. Once renunciation expresses itself, there are many ways of looking at it, of which the simplest is divided into two main types: internal and external. I take a pause here if any comments. Uh, I think I just wanted to add that looking inwards is always a very difficult thing to do and take off. External renunciation means giving up completely all worldly delights and physical attachments to material things. In the early stages, this renunciation is helpful to the extent to which it leads to internal renunciation and preoccupation with God. Tens of thousands of so-called sannyasis, renunciators, are to be found in India, of whom far too many have adopted this external renunciation only as a profession that enables them to indulge in an unproductive life of idleness. External renunciation, however, can be and often is real. When this is so, it will inevitably lead on to internal renunciation, and this is the renunciation that matters. In internal renunciation means the control of desires at their very source, so the mind does not fall a prey to the demands of lust, greed, and anger. This does not mean that one shall cease at once to have such thoughts. This is impossible, as such thoughts will continue to be troublesome as long as the sanskaras from which they arise are part of one's being. The fight is necessarily hard and long. For the West, in particular, external renunciation is inadvisable and impracticable. It should be internal and of the mind from the start. One should live in the world, perform all legitimate duties, and yet feel mentally detached from everything. One should be in the world, but not of it. The Sufis say, Dil ba yaar, dil bikar, das bikar, sorry. The heart with God and hands for work. Hazrat Nizamuddin Awliya, the perfect master of Delhi, was once asked by a visitor how one should live in the world. At that moment, it so happened that a few women were passing by with pictures of water balanced on their heads, and as they walked, they gossiped and gesticulated. Pointing to them, Nizamuddin said, "Look at those women. That's how you should live in the world." Can you just take the screen up? Asked to explain this cryptic remark, the master continued, "These women returning from the well with pitchers balanced on their heads seems to be thinking of nothing else but exchanging tidbits of gossip with each other. Yet they are all the time concentrating on something more important, on balancing the pitchers on their heads. Thus, whatever your body, your senses, or the purely surface part of your mind may be occupied with, see that the root of your mind is constantly focused on God." Vaitag and Vairagya. If we look upon renunciation as being a state of mind, we can understand how the state of mind may be either temporary or permanent. The former is known as Vaitag and the later as Vairagya. Vaitag, temporary renunciation, is simply a temporary disgust for the world and its affairs resulting from some shock, disappointment, or loss, combined with a vague desire for God, or it may come from a sudden impulse. In Vaitag, mind turns away from the world and takes to godly ways, but this attitude is not lasting, and the mind returns to its old ways as soon as circumstances alter or as soon as the impulse dies down. Vairagya, irrevocable renunciation, however, is an attitude of mind involving such a longing for God and such a deep indifference to things worldly that once roused, it knows no retreat and is proof against all the temptations to give it up. The famous example of Gautam Buddha is illustrative of Vairagya. We have already explained that renunciation is the overt expression of a latent desire for union with God, combined with a latent spirit of disgust for the world, and we used an analogy of flower, pollen, and fruit. As far as fertilization is concerned, the flower and pollen by themselves are helpless, for the two can only be brought together by some outside agencies such as wind, the bee, or the insect. Whether or not fertilization takes place in nature may depend upon so many thousands of unknown factors that modern science gives up trying to predict it and labels it chance. That, however, is beside the point at the moment, and in an analogy, we shall think of this fertilization as a gift. To return to Vairagya, let us remember that the longing for union with God is latent in every living being. However, it only pushes its way into consciousness when the soul approaches the beginning of what Meher Baba in the divine theme calls the realization process. The disgust for the world is also something that develops naturally in all of us and which grows more and more powerful as we draw nearer to the beginning of this realization process. When the flower is in full bloom and pollen ripe, the wind or the bee gives the gift of fertilization that produces the fruit. In the same way, also, when this moment of inner readiness comes, a divine gift descends upon the soul, which fertilizes the longing for God and the disgust or indifference to the world, and so brings about the priceless fruit of Vairagya. This divine gift may be a touch of inner grace from the indwelling God, or it will be the result of contact with a saint or a perfect master, but it is always a gift. Vairagya, when it first becomes manifest, will almost certainly express for a time as an external realization. But Vairagya, being permanent, will always lead sooner or later to the real renunciation, which is internal. When an aspirant has such an intense longing for truth, he is qualified to enter the path. There is a story of a master who was pestered by a disciple as to when he would realize God. Once, when they went to bathe in the river, the master held the aspirant under the water for a few moments. When the disciple was on the verge of suffocation, the master pulled him out and asked what he had thought of and longed for the most while under the water. The aspirant replied, air. The master explained that when the disciple had just as intense as longing for God, then the realization would come. Maulana Rumi says, Up kamju fishinge our bidast. Call for the waterless, but create thirst for it more. In the words of Meher Baba, the path begins with a conscious longing for a deeper reality. As the fish which is taken out of water longs to go back to water, so the aspirant who has sensed the goal longs to be united with God. In fact, the longing to go back to the source is present in each being from the very time that it gets separated from the source by the veil of ignorance. But it is unconscious till the aspirant enters the path. The Sufis call this attitude of mind tawbah, meaning repentance, and implying the turning away from or renouncing of the life of the senses for the life of the spirit. One who has taken this great step does not look back again at what he has left behind. Meher Baba says that there may be 1,000 seekers enjoying as many spiritual experiences, but there is only one path of gnosis. It is an internal but an actual pathway. Though not an ordinary path, it is distinctly perceptible as such to the internal eye of the true pilgrim who travels along it. Even those mystics who have truly experienced can only explain the section of the path that they themselves have traversed. Those who have reached the critical point on the third plane can know nothing about the fourth plane, nor can they lead anyone up to their own level. And their knowledge and experience are limited to themselves. Only those on the fifth and sixth planes can bring others up to their own level, and anyone upon whom their grace descends will be greatly benefited. The individual souls of the world are within the limits of gross sphere, which includes all the gross suns, moons, worlds, and all space. A savage, ignorant of the most elementary scientific laws and the code of right and wrong, and a great philosopher or scientist are both within the bounds of the gross sphere. The philosopher may be quite familiar in theory with the subtle sphere, and the scientist may be an authority on the extreme frontiers of modern physics. But from the standpoint of the subtle, they and the savage belong to the gross sphere. Until the gross sphere is experienced, gnosis remains a subject for intellectual.
Until the subtle sphere is experienced.
Sorry. Until the subtle sphere is experienced. Until the subtle sphere is experienced, gnosis remains a subject for intellectual quibbling for all those belonging to the gross sphere, because by subtle we do not mean merely the finest form of the gross. In the ordinary sense of the word, it may be correct to call very fine substances such as ether, the atom, vibration, light, and space subtle, but they are unquestionably gross, though in a very fine form. The asterisk, or the asterisk above, that is, see also Meher Baba, the stages of the path, discourses 124 to 138. The asterisk on the first lines, I think. Yeah, first paragraph. Continuing. Spiritually speaking, subtle means something completely different from the physical. However attenuated physical things may be. Although the gross sphere is the outcome of the subtle sphere, and is dependent on it, the subtle sphere is completely independent of the gross sphere. As an example, we may take the act of eating. The gross act is the outcome of thought and depends upon it, but the thought is independent of the physical act. Forgetfulness.
No,
The
forgetfulness is the next one.
Yeah.
That's the next supplement.
Oh, sorry.
We wanted to read renunciation, Vaitag, and Vairag.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think that brings out two aspects of renunciation, internal and external. And then the two types of Vaitag, and which is temporary, and then Vairagya, which is more sustained, right? So thanks for those two references. In fact, I'm going to put it up on Trello because it's a good companion reading with this. So, any questions before we continue, or rather before we wrap up? Any questions, comments?
It was good.
Okay.
Good review of
Indeed
most
was.
important aspects of spirituality.
Indeed. Okay, we will wrap up on that note, and Ravi, look forward to getting your videos.
Yeah.
Sanjay ji, enjoy the stay at Mehrabad. I hope it also gives you some more rain. So, were you on Wi-Fi, or were you on just on mobile internet right now? Just curious. Anyway, as I await that answer, and we can wrap up. Any other thoughts? Any questions? Okay. So if we have nothing else, I can stop recording, and if anybody wants to hang out for some more time, you're free to do so.